South Park humiliated Trump, Kristi Noem, and ICE, but the reaction this time just exposed a lot. How the Trump ICE raids, including these new ones getting caught on camera, are getting worse, with the craziest yet to come. And the big push to let 16-year-olds vote in elections has everyone divided. We're talking about all of that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, starting with this. South Park just humiliated the Trump administration again. Though this time it was less about Trump himself and more people in his orbit. But also it even started before the episode aired last night, because the Department of Homeland Security tried to use South Park as a way to promote itself, posting a still of the episode's teaser where ICE agents descended upon South Park with the caption, join.ice.gov. But then South Park ratioing the government commenting, wait, so we are relevant? Hashtag eat a bag of dicks. With that, of course, referencing the White House last month responding to the first episode where they said, the show hasn't been relevant for over 20 years and is hanging on by a thread with uninspired ideas and a desperate attempt for attention. But really, whatever you think about South Park, they have people's attention. And they got it again last night on an episode that focused on the elementary school counselor, Mr. Mackey, where he loses his job because what the Trump administration is doing to schools, and because he needs money, he joins ICE for its large salary. And as they're mocking the low quality of people being allowed in to ICE, we are introduced to Trump's DHS Secretary, Kristi Noem. And over the course of the episode, they really lean into mocking aspects of why she's been called Ice Barbie, where everything seems to be for a photo shoot or a video. People are having to constantly put on makeup, inject stuff, just keep her face from falling off, which literally it does fall off. But in addition to that, they really lean into the dog controversy with Kristi Noem, which, in case you forgot, she once told and then defended a story about how she shot and killed her own dog because it was untrainable. And over the course of the episode, she just shoots dog after dog in the face. She even snipes crypto, and as the credits run, she shoots up a dog store. And then as far as their critique of ICE, you have the new recruits loading into trucks for the first ICE raid. You have an agent advising them, keep your hands and feet inside the vehicle at all times, like it's a Disneyland ride. They raid a Dora the Explorer live show. ICE even later raids Heaven, with Noem reminding her agents if it's brown, it goes down. And then separate from that, they included JD Vance this week as a pint-sized babyface sycophant whom Trump calls annoying and stupid. With Trump even kicking Vance off screen at one point like he's a football, but the VP loyally returning to his side as if nothing happened. And then separate from the administration itself, South Park made fun of Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk types, right? Rage bait, influencer debate bros, with Carbon at one point who's taken on this role saying, these young college girls are totally unprepared, so I can just destroy them and also edit out the ones that actually argue back well. It just feels so good. And then, notably, as far as the reactions to this week we saw some of the people portrayed in South Park trying to roll with it. With Charlie Kirk saying the whole thing's awesome, he found it hilarious. JD Vance also seemingly taking that angle, saying, well, I finally made it, which, seems to be a drastically different reaction than from the first episode, where you had the White House going, they're not even relevant, and reports coming out that the real president was reportedly seething. And of course, all of this, it's playing out as South Park has now 48 more episodes to go with their new contract, with them seemingly set up to be a fixture of political discourse for a while. And then, next up in the news today, we've got to talk about ICE's latest controversial and likely illegal raid, the agency's massive recruitment campaign, a key new court battle in the White House's war on non-citizen students, and the president's most recent effort to gain more seats in Congress by any means necessary. Starting with that raid, which involved masked, heavily armed ICE agents jumping out of a rental truck and ambushing people at an LA Home Depot. Because if you've ever been to a Home Depot, immigrant day laborers gather outside looking for work, which is why they've become such a big target of Trump's immigration enforcement. Here, you had a worker saying that a rental truck pulled up to the parking lot at around 6:45 in the morning, the driver telling people in Spanish that he had work to offer. But then someone rolls up the back of the truck and ICE pours out, chasing and arresting anyone they can. And you actually had a Fox News correspondent publishing footage from inside the truck, with that reposted by a Border Patrol commander in California who called it Operation Trojan Horse. If he seems familiar to you, that's because he's been previously accused of misleading the public, saying of an immigration sweep that his agents had a predetermined list of targets, many with criminal records. But then records later showed that 77 out of 78 people detained had no prior record with the agency, with there being frequent reports of people just being targeted by ICE based on their appearance and whether they spoke Spanish, which is why you end up having Latino U.S. citizens getting swept up in raids. It also led to a federal judge ordering the Trump administration to halt indiscriminate immigration stops and arrests in 7 California counties, including Los Angeles last month, with a judge writing in her order that there was a mountain of evidence that federal immigration enforcement tactics were violating the Constitution. And in fact, last week, an appeals court upheld her ruling. And so the big question with this Home Depot raid is whether it violated the original order. Now there you have DHS claiming that the agents arrested 16 undocumented people from Guatemala, Mexico, Honduras, and Nicaragua. But notably, they didn't answer questions about their tactics or whether agents have been looking for specific people. So in response, you had a spokesperson for one California-based rights group saying, it is deeply disturbing that the federal government will stoop to these levels to continue their campaign of terror against working Angelenos. Saying these are Angelenos looking for an honest day's living. What we see in the video looks like an assault on people's liberties, an assault on individuals that were standing there looking for a job, and a targeted operation that was in fact lawless. And all of this it's not a random one-off. You got the head of another Southern California nonprofit claiming that Border Patrol agents seem to be making the same rounds again, saying they're hitting the same places that they hit in the past, but with new tactics, including pretending to be employers to lure people in. And you even had the rental truck company Penske chiming in, saying they're aware of what happened and Penske strictly prohibits the transportation of people in the cargo areas of its vehicles under any circumstances, saying the company was not made aware that its trucks would be used in today's operation and did not authorize this. And finally, saying they'd reach out to DHS to reinforce its policy to avoid improper use of its vehicles in the future. But that then brings us to the second thing here, and that is that if you are over 40 and you're interested in potentially breaking the law and terrorizing local communities, I've got great news for you. DHS is now waiving age limits on joining ICE, with that being just one part of a new campaign to massively expand their ranks. Campaign, remember, that's coming after Trump's mega bill funneled an unprecedented $170 billion towards immigration enforcement. And they're claiming that more than 80,000 Americans applied to join in just 1 week since it launched the new recruitment drive, with people being drawn in with an offer of up to a $50,000 signing bonus, student loan repayment assistance, and other benefits. And as far as the age requirements, it used to be that candidates to be criminal investigators, with limited exceptions, couldn't be older than 37 27 years old, and deportation officers couldn't be over 40. But now, they don't care, assuming that you meet the other limited requirements. With DHS actually announcing it by posting this, saying we're taking father-son bonding to a whole new level. To which you saw certain things play out, like someone responding saying drop the degree requirement and let the good old boys in. Think I can handle a little discomfort and taking down illegals, don't need a degree for that. To which DHS proudly responded, no college degree required to be a deportation officer. Which actually, that brings us to the third thing that I want to talk about, and that is that some people in the process of getting their degrees are now suing the Trump administration. Right? It's about free speech and censorship. With Stanford University's student newspaper, the Stanford Daily, saying in their lawsuit that several of the newspaper's writers have been forced to self-censor or quit the paper out of fear that the government would retaliate for what it publishes, claiming that it's received a number of requests from lawfully present non-citizens to have their names, quotes, or photos removed from articles, that many international students have stopped speaking to the paper's journalists altogether. And notably, this new lawsuit is somewhat similar to a case that just went to trial in Boston last month. And there you had people including the American Association of University Professors suing the Trump administration over what they called its ideological deportation policy that's led to several students fleeing the country or going into hiding to avoid arrest, with several students and academics testifying about how they'd scrubbed their social media profiles, censored their speech, and turned down opportunities out of fear. Even had members of the Trump administration testifying, including a Homeland Security agent belonging to the unit normally tasked with tackling drug, financial, and other crimes, with him explaining how he was told by the State Department to prioritize the arrest of Rumeysa Ozturk, a Tufts University student from Turkey with no criminal record who once wrote an op-ed critical of Israel. And he said that he was explicitly told not to inform her that her visa had been revoked. But I'll add, while a ruling there is expected this month, the Stanford case is also a little bit different. It goes further than others that have targeted the student arrests. We're taking aim at the constitutionality of the underlying legal argument that the Trump administration has relied on to arrest and try to deport foreign students. It revolves around two key provisions in the Immigration and Nationality Act. The first allows the Secretary of State to deport non-citizens if the Secretary personally determines that the alien's admission would compromise a compelling United States foreign policy interest. And the second gives the Secretary the power to revoke a visa or documentation at his or her discretion. The lawsuit says that invoking the power in response to speech is a clear violation of the First Amendment, with the complaint saying Marco Rubio and the Trump administration are trying to turn the inalienable human right of free speech into a privilege contingent upon the whims of a federal bureaucrat, triggering deportation proceedings against non-citizens residing lawfully in this country for their protected political speech regarding American and Israeli foreign policy. But as far as the government's response to it, a spokesperson for DHS calling the lawsuit baseless, saying there is no room in the United States for the rest of the world's terrorist sympathizers, and we are under no obligation to admit them or let them stay here. But then all of that, it brings us to the final thing that I want to talk about in this section, and that is that Trump is trying to keep undocumented immigrants off the U.S. Census, with him posting that a new and highly accurate census will be based on modern-day facts and figures, and importantly, using the results and information gained from the presidential election of 2024, and adding, people who are in our country illegally will not be counted in the census. And notably, this is not the first time that Trump has tried this. During his first term, he moved to add a citizenship question to the census, but a federal appeals court ruled the move was illegal, and the Supreme Court ultimately blocked it. But a key thing there is that the Supreme Court declined to explicitly rule on whether people without legal status can be excluded by the president from counts. Right, and that is Article 1 of the Constitution is required a census every 10 years to determine the number and distribution of seats in the House of Representatives. And the 14th Amendment separately requires the whole number of persons in each state to be included in the census, with the key word being persons, not citizens, so it's going to be interesting to see what sort of legal argument they try to use in this case. And then I've got more news for you in just a minute, but okay, honest question, how many brilliant ideas are just rotting away in your notes app right now? Because somewhere in that dusty graveyard of someday ideas lies your side hustle or maybe your next new thing. So why not make today the day that you commit to take that first step in taking on that opportunity or that passion project and taking it to the next level? You know, for me, it was my on-again, off-again book club. I had put it off forever. And I kid you not, like the DeFranco book club went from someday to launched in under an hour with today's sponsor, Squarespace. They make it crazy easy to build a site to start selling content, courses, physical or digital products, or really do almost anything that you have in mind. You know, whether you want to just showcase something or you want to charge a one-time fee or offer a subscription. And they've got stunning templates that look like you hired a designer, and their Fluid Engine editor, it lets you drag, drop, customize, no coding, no stress, no excuses. Even my team uses Squarespace for our Daily Dip newsletter where tens of thousands of you guys get your PDS fix in your inbox every day. New polls, giveaways, PDS show notes, it's all run through Squarespace. And like clockwork, a Daily Dip issue went out today and your project could be next. So hey, take that first step today with a free trial at squarespace.com/Phil or scan that QR code. Right, make today launch day. Just make sure that when it's ready to go, use code Phil to get 10% off and let them know we sent you. And then the FBI is now going to hunt down the Texas Democrats who fled the state to stop the Republicans from rigging the election. And so the biggest questions here are on what grounds, with what authority, and what crime is the FBI investigating? If it was illegal to leave Texas, Ted Cruz would be on death row by now. The FBI can't just use its vast surveillance powers to spy on and locate random citizens. Texas issued a civil warrant, not a criminal one. The feds have no role here. So you've got people asking, is the FBI going to violate the sovereignty of Illinois and the rights of Texas Democrats because the president told them to? Though with that, you had Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker saying that he will not allow the FBI to take the Texas Democrats. So I'm saying if the Trump administration...
They're grandstanding. There literally is no federal law applicable to this situation. None. The FBI agents might show up, whether it's federal agents coming to Illinois or state rangers from Texas. If you haven't broken federal law, you're basically unwelcome. And there's no way that they can be that our state legislators here, the Texas state legislators, can be arrested.
And while J.B. Pritzker is correct there, you also have people saying, this is an administration that is in total violation of the Constitution at all times. So for now, we're going to have to continue to have eyes on this and see how it plays out. And then next up in the news, we should talk about how Apple's Tim Cook has emerged as a very interesting person to